we've been saying for a while, haven't we, that Thomas Frank would be the front runner, and looks like that will be the case. And I would expect that within the next 24 hours, Tottenham will indicate to Brentford that they will pay that release clause in the region of £9-10 million.
You know, he is in many ways Daniel Levy, an accountant's dream. Because what is it, £71 million net spend over the last 7 years at Brentford. And yet he's kept them up. But they've gone for the big names. They went for Conte. They went for Mourinho. They didn't work out for whatever reason. I just think he's ready.
So the big complaint is that Levy keeps firing managers. That is true. They don't spend enough on players of high quality. Tottenham spend a very low percentage of their turnover on wages in comparison to everybody else in the league. That's the complaint of the Tottenham supporters. Last word on Big Ange. When will we see him back in the Premier League? Will we see him back in the Premier League?
So I think he's going to want to come back to the Premier League, and he's going to want to prove that his style of play can be successful and prove people wrong.
It's the England conundrum, isn't it? How do you get these great attacking players to be playing fluidly?
I thought it was absolute dross. I think if Gareth Southgate was in charge, he would have got absolutely pilloried. I thought it was a terrible England performance. But all three games that Thomas Tuchel have been really underwhelming. They've been very Gareth Southgate-esque.
I think Thomas Tuchel is learning. It's not easy being a national manager. You think on paper things can work, but actually maybe certain players don't click.
But I think when they play Senegal on Tuesday night, we'll get a greater measure of where England actually are. But this is a team actually that have lost once since England beat them in November 2022. It's Premier League All Access with me, Sam Matterface, and Alex Crook and Scott Minto. We're here looking back at England, but also looking at some of the big stories from the Premier League. And the big story this weekend, Scott, is that Alex Crook has made his debut at Old Trafford. Yes, he's just hot-footed it back from dashing down the left wing. He was playing wing-back today for a Manchester United Select 11 at Old Trafford. No one could quite believe their eyes, but it really did happen. And I've never seen him happier, Scott.
Well, do you know what? I'm waiting for it to be in the notebook as the one and only sort of story that's going on there. If he hadn't have sent me the video a little bit earlier today, I wouldn't have believed you said bombing on down the left. I do believe, were you left back or left wing back, Crookie?
No, right wing back, and then right side central defender, because our manager, Simon Peach from the Press Association, wanted to adopt the Ruben Amorim system. Now, we were 2-1 down with a few minutes to go, and I said, come on, Peachy, let's go to a back four. Let's chase this game. We drew 2-2.
Oh,
See,
so it's all down to you.
Versatility. Tactical versatility.
He shouldn't just be playing for Manchester United. He should be playing manager of Manchester United right now.
Oh, crikey! What were you? How would you describe yourself as a wing back? Were you sort of Amad Diallo, or were you Luke Shaw?
Yeah, more Luke Shaw, I think. In fact, you know what it's like. The adrenaline's flowing. That they played the This Is the One as we were going out through the tunnel. Brilliant. We had our team picture. I'm looking around thinking this is incredible. And I made one run down the wing and then thought, don't do that again, because that's a long way to get back. So yes, I was a bit more conservative after that. But I cut out a few crosses. I was quite pleased.
I used to tell myself that regularly, Crookie, through a 20-year career.
Hey, listen, as Ruud Gullit used to say, Scott, just do two things that affect the game. And Crook, we heard that you did that. I know you compared yourself to Luke Shaw. Your manager did text me and say he was not sure. But anyway, I'm sure England aren't sure about their performance at the weekend as well. They got Senegal on Tuesday night, and we'll look ahead to that as we build up to another international friendly and more problems for Thomas Tuchel. I say more problems for Thomas Tuchel because I think actually what he was hoping for was a few solutions to actually present themselves over the weekend against Andorra. And actually it became more of a headache than anything else, Scott. Look, it's 3 wins from 3 games and another 3 points. And ultimately there has been no damage done whatsoever here. However, the big issue is that this is an opponent which you're supposed to blitz. And when you haven't, and the other previous guy who you've sort of said, actually, do you know what? We need to improve on his style of football, has already done that. You're asking for a little bit of criticism. He was really upset afterwards.
Yeah, look, I think even what everyone has said about Gareth Southgate, and I don't think he mean anything derogatory by it, then Andorra 1-0, you're going to get criticism. You know you are. I actually don't have too much of a problem with the team selection. I mean, I would have liked to seen Trent at right back, really. Miles Skelly at left back. I didn't have a problem. I said to you before about Jordan Henderson. Whether he's actually going to be starting in the World Cup is another matter. But against Andorra away, he's the number 6 that I think Thomas Tuchel feels that we don't quite have one in there. But you look at it's the England conundrum, isn't it? How do you get these great attacking players to be playing fluidly? And there was only really Noni Madueke, I feel, who out of the attacking players that actually can say that he had a pretty decent game. So there is a problem. I didn't have a problem with Luke Jones going into right back, Bellingham pushing then further on. Quite often he was, at times when Kane dropped in, the furthest forward. So he's able to do that kind of hybrid role. He's intelligent enough to do that and very good athletically. But yeah, there wasn't enough of Rodgers. There wasn't enough of Palmer. Kane obviously got the winning goal, but he's waiting on service. It just was typical England, I've got to say.
Typical England against the low block, which has been a problem for the last couple of years. But I suppose there is a danger that you get a little bit too caught up in it. And speaking to Thomas Tuchel today, he says, the truth is that it wasn't all bad. There are 10 minutes at the end that I'm really upset with because there was a feeling that 1-0 is going to be enough against this Andorra team. And actually, there's a danger then that you get caught out at the other end. So you've got to take that more seriously. He said, quite rightly, I look back at the game, there was an XG of 4. On any other given day, we would have won 4-0 and everybody would be feeling slightly different about it. But what we lacked was a ruthlessness in finishing. So you can sort of look at it that way. And you have to factor in, don't you, that this is the first few steps for him and this group into international football.
You two are far too kind. I thought it was absolute dross. I saw one of our newspaper colleagues suggest it's England's worst ever victory. And I think they've got a case. 1-0 against Andorra. I didn't understand the Henderson selection. I disagree with Scott on that one. Why does Jordan Henderson need to play in a defensive midfield role against a team ranked 173rd in the world? Why is he playing at a right back in Reece James at left back, and a right back who's not even played much football for his club this season? It was asking a lot of him. And why does Harry Kane, I know he got the goal, why does he have to play the whole game? We didn't see Ivan Toney at all. I assume he will against Senegal. I think if Gareth Southgate was in charge, he would have got absolutely pilloried. I thought it was a terrible England performance.
I don't disagree with you. I think it was a really bad performance, and I think that it was completely opposite to what he was expecting to get from that group, because what he did was try and flood the team with attacking players to try and ensure that they did get the entertainment that they like. But I do also think that you're in a situation where he is learning what he can do. Andorra are desperate to keep a clean sheet, so they're playing better than I think I've ever seen Andorra played, and sadly I have seen them play quite a lot, but they were very, very well organised. But also, you sort of don't want to overreact at this stage because, yeah, it's a bad result. But Spain struggled to break them down when they played them recently. I know other teams have struggled against them as well. And look, it's no excuse because it was not a good performance. And the England fans that travelled out there were 7,000 or more England fans that travelled out there, right? And anyone who criticises the fact that the stadium's empty has got no clue about what actually happened out there. It's incredibly expensive to get to at a difficult time. And you've got a festival going on, a sound festival going on, where the hotel rooms are ridiculously priced. So 7,000 people going out there to watch England, brilliant turnout from the England supporters. And they deserve more. They deserve more in terms of performance. But I think when they play Senegal on Tuesday night, we'll get a greater measure of where England actually are, because he's not going to select Henderson in midfield. He's not going to play an odd hybrid back three. He's going to play Miles Lewis-Skelly at left back. He's going to play Bukayo Saka on the right-hand side of the attack, and it's going to be a more conventional-looking England, Scott.
Yeah, no, it will be, and I think it almost has to be now as well. I actually thought the first 15, 20 minutes weren't that bad. I also felt there should have been a penalty on Harry Kane. It was like a really clumsy challenge in the box.
Yeah, there was a handball as well, which I thought was going to be given at one stage.
Yeah, the handball, I can understand why it wasn't given. But anywhere else in the pitch, that clumsy. Anyway, that's not the point. I do agree with Crookie to a point. And it wasn't as if Andorra were 11 behind the ball every single moment of the game. They did try to press high at times. That's the time then to play through and maybe beat your man. And they had the opportunity to do that, but they didn't take that opportunity. So, yes, look, it was very disappointed indeed. I think Thomas Tuchel is learning it's not easy being a national manager. You think on paper things can work, but actually maybe certain players don't click. It's a little bit harsh on the players to say that you've got to be brilliant in one particular game. Otherwise, it looks like you two, for example, can't play together. But that is top level football when you haven't got that many sort of meetings up before the World Cup starts. And you've got to be bang on it. And they weren't.
Do you think he'll be quite ruthless after that performance? Do you think he'll look at one or two that he saw in that game and think, actually, do you know what? I thought you were for me, but I'm not sure now.
Potentially. I thought his words were very interesting. Didn't hold back, did he? I know he backtracked a little bit in that clip we played because he said, look, I wasn't picking on individual players, but clearly he was frustrated with the overall team performance. And actually, listen to the reaction from England fans on talkSPORT as I've been on my travels this weekend. The one player who's coming in for an awful lot of criticism, and maybe this is a bit of a hangover to the Euros and his attitude in certain games, Jude Bellingham seems to be really under fire from England fans.
I think that's harsh. I think that's
I didn't
really
think he was
harsh.
that bad. I thought he was the one sort of driving the tempo from midfield. I thought he was, chest puffed out, trying to make something happen, being all over the place. I imagine his heat map was quite considerable. What did you think, Scott?
Yeah, look, I did hear that with Crookie as well. I've been listening to talkSPORT throughout the day, and that there have been fans who have been sort of texting in and saying that, but I don't agree with it. Did he play well? Not really, but was he one of the few people who was trying to make look like something would happen? Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you get with Jude, even if you're not playing well. And sometimes he can get so frustrated that either he's not playing well or the team's not playing well. It can look like he's one tackle away from maybe a sending off. And, Wayne Rooney, David Beckham, the real top players, sort of have that gene where they're frustrated. But no, I think that's harsh. He didn't play great, but he was still one of the players that was trying to make things happen.
This week, obviously, sees them take on Senegal at Nottingham Forest. We know that he expects Senegal to be a little bit less structured than Andorra. They play more instinct football. They like fast-paced, high tempo. They've got some good individuals going forward. Ismail Assar is definitely the pick out of the bunch, and he scored the equaliser late on against Ireland. I mean, I don't know how much you know about Senegal, Crooks, but I imagine you're going to expect England to win this game and win it well because you expect them to do that all the time. But this is a team, actually, that have lost once since England beat them in November 2022. This is a team that last summer beat Brazil 4-2 in a neutral ground in Lisbon. This is a team that hardly conceded a goal. This is a team with a brand new goalkeeper who's just switched allegiances and has been incredibly impressive in a relegated team, actually, in France, albeit he's been their standout performer. This is a team that actually are going to provide a level of opposition which gives England a little bit more of a measure of where they stand.
And I think they need that. I was talking to a good friend of mine over the weekend, and he was saying England are at a big disadvantage when it comes to Spain and Portugal, who've been through this Nations League campaign. They've actually had experience of coming up against top quality sides that could, on paper, go all the way in the World Cup. England haven't done that yet. I take on board what you're saying about Senegal, but they're not going to win the World Cup. So I still think this is a game that England would expect to win. And I would like to see a much better performance because I'm not just frustrated with what we witnessed on Saturday. And I've got to say, I had a job convincing Mrs. Crook that the second half was worth watching. But all three games that Thomas Tuchel have been really underwhelming. They've been very Gareth Southgate-esque.
And weren't you sort of so depressed by the whole fact that you decided to go on a stag do to cheer yourself up?
I may well have done that at the 11th hour, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thomas Tuchel's driving me to drink.
And Mrs. Crook was happy with that?
I think she was just pleased to get rid of me. Do you know what? We've had, 2 weekends off now since the season finished.
And I think
she's already ready for me to go back to work, to be honest with you.
I get it.
Sam, I listened to him with Natalie Sawyer and Tony Cascarino as well. He came on, his throat was really sore. He said, I think Natalie even said, "Are you okay?" And what was it? What was the reason? Oh, I've got a cold. So I texted him straight after.
That's still the case.
I texted him straight afterwards, as you well know, in the group. And I said, "Oh, look, I hope you're okay, Crookie. You didn't sound too good, but well done. It came across really well." Then suddenly you pipe up with, "Well, he did go on a stag do the night before." That is so...
That's the truth.
Honestly.
Yeah, he does like to sort of, spin it a little bit.
I have had a cold the last few days.
Yes,
you can still hear it now.
You also had a skinful as well. Both things can be true. In terms of the sort of entertainment value, you're right. It hasn't been very entertaining. And I think that's probably a bit of an issue for Thomas Tuchel, because he came in and said, I want to play this style of football, fast-paced football. But actually, maybe he's starting to learn, because it's his first experience of international football, that international football doesn't really lend itself to that, because England can't play like that when it comes to the World Cup. There's no chance that they'll be able to do that in 28, 29 degree heat in Houston or in Miami. They've got to play more possession-based football, keeping the ball and letting that do the work than running around like lunatics, harassing all over the pitch. So actually, maybe they've got to row back from that and be a bit more pragmatic. And I think he actually said that during his sort of debrief of the international camp that he's currently been on. That means it might not be that entertaining. Does it really matter as long as they're winning?
No, but we're not at that stage yet. I mean, when he first came out and said it, a couple of days later, I was in the talkSPORT studio, and I thought, look, who am I? I said, who am I to argue with Thomas Tuchel? But to play in those sort of conditions you're talking about, with not just the heat, but probably humidity as well, with that English style football, is going to be a very, very difficult thing to do. So many games in a short space of time, going again and again and again. But these weren't I mean, how hot was it? You were there in Barcelona. I'm sure
it was hot. It was hot, a bit worse than that, actually, Scott. It wasn't just hot, it was humid. Because at that part of the afternoon, the cloud came over and it was sticky and it wasn't great, yeah.
So we have to give them a little bit of a pass, as much as we don't want to. We have to realise what the conditions are like. But still, this is Andorra, and we need to do a lot better. Yeah. And Senegal may well lend itself to being a lot better because of you've just described the style of play. Look, the bottom line is, I almost think that we're one of those who, especially with a new manager in place, finding a new combination, is we can get brought down by teams rather than showing the class that there really is. And actually, when we play a better team, we can play a lot better ourselves. That's what I'm certainly hoping for anyway.
Yeah, so and again, by the same token, please don't tell me next time, Crook, that the Nations League doesn't matter, because it really does matter. It matters because England have to be playing the games that Spain, Portugal, France and Germany are playing. They can't afford to be in Nations League B and play Greece, Republic of Ireland and Finland and waste 6 international matches on games that they're definitely going to win and definitely going to get through. They need to be playing higher class opposition. So when it comes to the end of the 2026 World Cup, in that period between October and December, when they're playing Nations League games again, they need to be competitive Nations League games. They need to be against the higher grade opposition, because that's the only way they are going to learn. And that is why the Nations League matters.
I agree with you. And I think it was on Gareth that England got relegated, and particularly that dismal performance that we saw against Hungary at Molineux. There is no point in England being in the second tier of that competition. They have to be playing against the best teams in the world, I think, in order to bring the best out of themselves. Because again, you go back to the World Cup, or the last Euro, sorry, I should say, the best 45 minutes of football they produced was that against the Dutch. It was against the lesser nations. They really struggled to impose themselves, and they're obviously up against it when it comes to a low block. That is something that Thomas Tuchel is going to have to find a solution to, and find one pretty quick, because, as you keep telling us, how many camps are there between now and the World Cup?
Yeah, they've got, after this one, they've got 4 camps, 3 in the winter, or autumn, winter, 1 in March. But by March time, they really should have sorted out who's going to play where. They need to be refining things, not necessarily still putting stuff together. So, they haven't got much time. And that is a key consideration, which is why I think he has selected the Club World Cup players. It's why we're in a situation where he's playing Harry Kane against Andorra, because he's trying to find those connections and spot those connections. I do think that was part of an experiment at the weekend, even though I asked him about that on Friday and he said, sort of dismissed me and said, no, this is a game to win. We're going to win the game. It's going to be the best possible team. I don't believe that, because I don't believe that in these best possible team, Jordan Henderson would be in it over Declan Rice. So I don't think that's true. Saka would have played if he really needed to, but because of his little discomfort, they let him have that game off. So I think there will be a bit more of experimentation until we get to the really key games, which is Serbia twice in quick succession, for example.
Yeah, and look, for me, you're looking at the game tomorrow, Ivan Toney has to play. I mean, you're right about if best 11, Harry Kane starts. We know what Harry Kane can do. Ivan Toney has to start. Otherwise, what's the point of bringing him over? You haven't gone over to see him play in any game at all in Saudi. You're looking at him at the training pitch. It's still an experimental stage at the moment. But at the moment, what we saw so far, that looks a million miles away from what would 11 be at the start of a World Cup.
Yeah, and obviously we mentioned about the Club World Cup players. If they're tired after a long, drawn-out season in the Premier League and Europa League or Conference League football, imagine what it's going to be like next year when 9 of that squad have played in the Club World Cup. Then they've got a full season. A lot more of them are playing in the Champions League next year than they were this year. So they've got an even harder season next campaign, you would have thought, for most of them. No one knows what's going to happen, in terms of results. And that before we even get there, we're talking about players that are going to have been playing almost for 2 years straight. So when they get to America, they are going to be fatigued. So they're going to need some sort of management in the way that they prepare themselves for that. And if they can't raise themselves for a game against Andorra in the heat, what's it going to be like in a World Cup quarter-final against Spain?
You're right. You're wearing an England shirt. You should be bang on it 100% of the time. But I'm telling you now, if they were playing France, Portugal or Spain, they would have to be up for it even more. They would have to be even more motivated. They would get tested to the max. So we would see the opposition would almost bring out a better performance from us.
I totally get you, but some of the argument is, Scott, that it's been a long season. But if it's been a long season this season, it's going to be a lot longer next season.
No, absolutely.
That's the point I'm making.
And it's been a long season for Spain, Portugal and France, so you can't come out with that. But I definitely think, and I understand why people can still criticise what I'm about to say, to play Andorra away is different to playing Portugal or Spain in the final of the Nations League. They would have had to have been up for it. It's almost forced out of them. Whereas when they're trying to force a game against Andorra and there's a low block, it's very difficult to do. They still should have been a lot better, but I'm telling you, they would have been better against Spain or Portugal.
Major pluses, if you can look at any pluses from that game, what would it be, Crook?
I thought Noni Madueke did well in the first half when they were struggling. I was impressed with his performance. I think maybe he brings a little bit different. Apart from that, I'm struggling, to be honest.
I'm going to go Ezri Konsa. I think, he didn't have to do much, but when he did and was required, especially at the end, right at the very end, gets across really quickly. He stayed alert. I thought that's important. I thought there were some good touches from Rodgers as well, actually. There was one balletic piece of skill. And I thought Curtis Jones played well.
Do you know what? That pass that led to the first goal, that was what we were looking for on a more regular basis. It was a brilliant pass. First of all, to see it, then to have that weighted pass. Great run from Harry Kane. We don't give him enough mentions just to run in behind. But no, there's not a lot. I agree with Konsa. Definitely agree with Madueke. Apart from that, there wasn't a lot.
Yep.
Cole Palmer disappointing again in an England shirt.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought he, hitting the first man with free kicks and set pieces. I thought that was disappointing. Yeah.
Actually, that was a big bugbear of mine. Sorry, Scott. Before you come in, as someone who thought Dan Burn might be good value for the first goal, we had about 8 corners in the first 25 minutes, and they were all dreadful. England's set piece delivery was appalling.
No, I agree. I just don't know why Crookie was smiling as he said Cole Palmer was terrible.
Well, no one asked him actually for his most disappointing play. He just offered it up because that's the kind of Grinch that he is. But anyway, I wonder what the pundits are saying on MUTV now, having reviewed Crookie's performance. I noticed that he scurrilously escaped Old Trafford without doing a post-match interview as well. Right, okay, that's it for England. We'll review the Senegal game on Wednesday's podcast. So let's take a look at the rest of the international action and the Premier League gossip, starting with the Nations League final on Sunday night. Nations League final on Sunday night saw Portugal lift it for the second time. Both semi-finals earlier in the week well and truly delivered in terms of quality. It was a really good match, actually. I thought, actually, extra time lost its way a little bit, but, the 90 minutes were terrific. I mean, again, I know I keep banging on it's a really hard sort of job to do, and I know that it's playing football, but extra time is pointless, right? Everyone agree with me? Extra time is just pointless. Why do we need extra time anymore? We don't need extra time. Let's just go straight to penalties. It's just pointless.
I do for these particular games. I don't if there's a real big team against the minnow, because they will see even more of a low block for the 90 minutes. More difficult to keep a clean sheet with 120 than 90, but when you got two top teams like this, especially at the end of the season, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely improved the Carabao Cup. I think we all think that, and I wonder whether or not it won't be long before we do it in the FA Cup. But Portugal, the only team to retain the Nations League, and another major trophy for Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, there will be a debate. I know it's not really a major trophy. Well, actually, do you know what? It is a major trophy, and it should be considered as such, right? Because to win this tournament, you have to play the very best in Europe. There is no easy games. There's no one warm-up game getting into it. There's no 3 easy group games and then a last 16 game against somebody who you're going to beat anyway. This is, throughout the course of a season, beating the best, 4 of the best 16 teams in Europe, then a quarterfinal, then a semi-final, and then a final against elite nations. You have to be very good to lift the Nations League, I think.
Yeah, and he's got a bit of stick in some quarters for, maybe playing to the cameras. But I think you could see what it meant to Portugal, and in particular to Cristiano Ronaldo, someone who's won it all when it comes to individual and team honours, really, apart from the World Cup, obviously. And the fact he was so emotional about winning it, I think tells you all you need to know. And they've done it the hard way, haven't they, Portugal? When you look at how they came through in the semi-final, I thought Spain would win, having seen a bonkers game against France in their half of the draw. So for Portugal to find a way to come through, I think they deserve tremendous credit. And I wonder if Roberto Martinez has restored his reputation a little bit after their disappointment at the Euros.
Well, interestingly, I can tell you that the last couple of weeks have been really difficult for him. They've been batting away suggestions that Jose Mourinho should be going in there as the Portugal manager. We've had agents trying to push the narrative for somebody else to take charge for the World Cup. There's been lots of that going on, and he's had to sort of stand above that and concentrate on the job in hand and try and allow that sort of talk to happen away from his sphere. But he woke up this morning knowing that surely, Scott, they can't edge him out now because he's just delivered one of 3 trophies in Portugal's history.
No, absolutely not. And look, he was obviously in charge of the Belgium side that didn't quite make it. I think they came up against, I think they were the second best team in the 2018 World Cup. And I look at them now, and Spain are the better team. The stats will tell you that, but your eyes will tell you over the whole 120, certainly sort of the first 90, they're the better side. But that's where the manager takes even more credit for finding a way to stay in against a better team, coming back, making some substitutions, taking it to penalties, and then you never know what can happen there. So, no, absolutely. If there are any doubts about that, I don't see how on earth, unless you're Daniel Levy, if you win a trophy, you can't get rid of your manager.
Luis de la Fuente decided to withdraw Pedri halfway through the second half. I think that had an impact on the game because he is such a player who can command a football match, isn't he? I think he's absolutely terrific to watch. What's your sort of view on his performance? Because actually that change really altered the tone of the match.
Yeah, certainly offered Portugal the opportunity to go and start taking control of the game. I actually thought Spain in the second half of extra time wrestled control back, but I agree with you in terms of the extra 30 minutes, neither side ever really looked like winning it. I know there's been a lot of talk about Lamine Yamal being brought back down to earth, but I'll let Scott take over there when it comes to Nuno Mendes. I think that was more about him than about Lamine Yamal, and certainly I don't think we can start picking holes in his game at this moment in time.
As someone who has starred in Portugal as a left back, the greatest ever English left back to play for Benfica, might be the only one, but it doesn't matter. That's just mere details. Nuno Mendes, left back, star of the show, scored 1, assisted 1, scored a fantastic penalty, by the way. Everyone was thinking, crikey. I thought when I first saw it, the goalkeeper's gone the right way here, but he hit it so hard and fast, it was nowhere actually close to getting it. But it also shackled Lamine Yamal. So as a former left back, Scott, how would you rate his performance? Was it Minto-esque?
I wasn't quite that good, but let's just say it was world class. I mean, I think his was the penalty before Morata. If not, it was the one before that. So we're getting to the real
business end.
Real climax of it, where I can't remember who was talking about it. I think it was Andros who was saying about actually it's about trying to hit with power, and the more nervous you get, the more you just want to be precise, and that's what happened with Morata. He basically ticks every box to the point where I might even start a petition to say, at what point can a left back win the Ballon d'Or?
Ooh.
I mean,
hold on a second. He's won the Nations League. He's won the Champions League. He's won the French League. He's scored in the Nations League final. That's a shout, isn't it?
I think they won the treble, didn't they? PSG,
Yeah.
Domestic,
Yeah, they did.
domestic and the Champions League. Just saying,
Hey,
saying.
game
But
recognises game, Scott.
I mean, what I would say is Lamine Yamal. This kid, I didn't think I'd see another Lionel Messi in my lifetime. Honestly, for me, it's Maradona and Messi, and then Ronaldo isn't quite there for me. Chat for another time. But what he did, not just marking him, but the way he got forward as well. When you're left back up against a top class player, you're thinking, I just need to keep him quiet. Remember Mark Cucurella against Anthony? His job was just literally take him out of the game, and that's exactly what he did. But Nuno Mendes got forward, looked dangerous, could have scored, could have made assists. He was sensational. For me, he's up there with the very best players in the world. It's just not a sexy position, Sam, is it? You've played in that position before.
Hey, I tell you what, wing-back was definitely not a sexy position today at Old Trafford, that's for sure. Wales made it 9 games unbeaten under Craig Bellamy, who was called the last year the best of his life. He can equal Mark Hughes' record of 10 undefeated away in Belgium tonight. He's done a brilliant job, actually, and we're recording this before they play Belgium. But actually, if they do manage to win that game, they're almost 2 feet in the World Cup for the first time since 1958, which would be quite some achievement. He's done a brilliant job there.
Oh, he's done superbly. And I think the biggest compliment you can pay him, and obviously Wales have had that sort of golden era where they qualify for back-to-back international tournaments. They haven't got a superstar in Gareth Bale anymore. They haven't got Aaron Ramsey as the force he once was. They haven't got Joe Allen. They've got a lot of talented players, actually quite a few players who are playing fairly regularly in the Premier League. But the fact that Craig Bellamy has managed to mould that together without those Galacticos, I think is brilliant. And you can see he's fostered a real club spirit at international level.
Good luck to him. Okay, let's get into some of the Premier League news now. Ange Postecoglou has left Spurs and Daniel Levy is going to get Thomas Frank to replace him. Look, I mean, Big Ange has been sacked. We all know the situation by now, but people listening to this podcast will all know by now. It was fascinating listening to the reaction on talkSPORT over the weekend, but on Monday morning with Martin Keown and with Simon Jordan, and Simon was sort of like, this is the emotion needs to be taken out of this. It is the right decision at the right time. I pointed out that they'd failed to win 52 of their last 90 games in all competitions in 90 minutes, which is a bit of a startling statistic, really. And that sort of tells you that the problems run deeper than just we've had a few injuries, which is true. They did have some big injuries, but I think when you have a load of big injuries, you've got to manage the way the club plays in order to get results too. So a quick word from both of you, I think, on the replacement, because I think we're now into this is Thomas Frank territory. Crook, just tell us the details of where we are with that. And then, Scott, if you just give us a reaction as to what you think of him.
Well, conversations between Daniel Levy and Thomas Frank's camp have been taking place over the last couple of weeks. Personal terms, verbally agreed. We reported that on talkSPORT this morning. And I would expect that within the next 24 hours, Tottenham will indicate to Brentford that they will pay that release clause in the region of £9-10 million. I think one stumbling block at the moment is that Thomas Frank is going to want to take a fair few of his backroom staff with him. My understanding is that isn't covered by the release clause, so they're going to have to maybe negotiate on that as well. But we've been saying for a while, haven't we, that Thomas Frank would be the front runner, and looks like that will be the case.
Yeah, do you know what? I think he's absolutely ready. I mean, actually, my favourite has just suddenly overtaken Thomas Frank is Oliver Glasner. And the way he dealt with the sort of the poor start to Palace and then but came back, and the 2-5 goals they conceded, the way he dealt with that post-match, saying one thing to the press and another thing you can tell to the dressing room and the finish to the season they've had. But in terms of Thomas Frank, I don't see what more he can do. He took over a Brentford side that was kind of mid-table in the Championship, made them really exciting. I used to watch them, used to cover them with the BMW. They fell away in the playoff final. Then they went up the next season. He realised, and this is where Ange didn't really have that adaptability up until the very end. He realised that you can't just jump up to the Premier League and play the same way. So it was 5 at the back. It was long ball. It was set pieces. But it was just a way to get his team established. He did exactly that. Then it was 3-5-2 against the big boys, 4-3-3 against the teams that he thinks he can nick points off. Then this season it's been pretty much 4-3-3 the whole time, playing really good football. He's had loads of injuries. He hasn't moaned about them. He's good with the media. You know, Ange wasn't good with the media. I'm sure he'd be really good with Crookie. Anyway, and don't forget, he was interviewed by Manchester United, wasn't he, after Ten Hag won the cup and decided not to go down that route. The only cons sort of side of it is he didn't really do too well in the cups at Brentford. And I know for a fact, speaking to Brentford fans, that was the one thing they could perhaps look for. And the other one, of course, is that he had no real pressure at Brentford as well. And to jump into the Tottenham hot seat, to combine Premier League and Champions League is going to be a different thing. But I genuinely think he's ready. He's clever. He's a good coach. He's adaptable. He's good with the media. And I hope that even if he doesn't win a cup next season, if they finish top 8 or something, people don't throw that at him.
Reminds me a little bit of the scenario when Maurizio Pochettino left Southampton and went to Tottenham.
Yeah.
He had the experience of being in another Premier League club and sort of observing, but having relative success there before being moved on and up into the Tottenham job. And I think at the same time, people were still saying, well, actually, leaving Southampton is a big thing because Southampton's a secure, happy environment. You're all going to be okay there. Tottenham's a risk because managers don't really survive there. And that is also true. And talking about it from a Spurs fan's point of view, there's a couple of big complaints. The big complaint is that Levy keeps firing managers. That is true. 6 managers in the last 5 years. So you can't deny that has been the case. That they don't spend enough on players of high quality. And the argument that comes back always from the club and when they're spinning it, they'll say, well, we've spent £500 million net over the last 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is on players. But the truth is we all know that the way football clubs measure their success and failure is by their wage expenditure in the wage expenditure table and where they finish in the league, right? So if you the 10th biggest spender on wages per year and you finish 8th, you have overachieved on what is expected of you. Tottenham spend a very low percentage of their turnover on wages in comparison to everybody else in the league. If it's not the lowest, it's very close to it. I think it's in the 40%. No one else goes anywhere below 70. I mean, it is really a very low percentage of wages. And that's the complaint of the Tottenham supporters. Now, that squad is going to need some level of investment if they're going to be able to give Thomas Frank the best chance of competing in 2 competitions next year, Scott, because they couldn't do it this year. And this is a higher grade.
No, absolutely. And, we can talk about a lot of teams. Newcastle struggled. Villa struggled, but nearly did it in terms of the combining of the Premier League and the Champions League. Thomas Frank has never done this before. He is in many ways Daniel Levy, an accountant's dream, because what is it, £71 million net spend over the last 7 years at Brentford, and yet he's kept them up. Don't forget, Ivan Toney was out for pretty much a whole season, and everyone's saying they're going down with the injuries, and he didn't. So in that sense, he can manage up, he can manage the media, he knows his place almost, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. So I do get where the Spurs fans are coming from, but they've gone for the big names. They went for Conte, they went for Mourinho. They didn't work out for whatever reason. I just think he's ready, and I'm really interested to see and genuinely want, this is from an ex-Chelsea and West Ham player, I want to see him do well at Spurs.
Yeah, I can understand why people sort of are rooting for him, because he's a very nice character, and I've got a hell of a lot of respect for him and the way he conducts himself, and I know Crook feels the same. Last word on Big Ange. When will we see him back in the Premier League? Will we see him back in the Premier League? I reckon October, November, Leeds United. There you go. There's my prediction.
Well, you smashed it out of the park with that one. How can we compete with that? I think we know that Leeds have admired him in the past. I think he'll want to come back to the Premier League and prove people wrong. I think if you look at the things he was saying after that Europa League final, he knew he was gone. People close to him knew 6-7 weeks before that final that the journey was going to come to an end. So everything he was saying in the build-up to that final and in the afterglow of victory was a pointed message to Daniel Levy. I'm a winner, Daniel. That the third season is always better than the second. So I think he's going to want to come back to the Premier League, and he's going to want to prove that his style of play can be successful.
Yeah. And actually, do you know what? It is worth pointing out, we've been talking about this for a while. We have been saying that he's going to leave because we were told that that is the case a long time ago by people really close to the situation. We've also been telling you that Paratici is going to come back and that Scott Munn was going to lose his job as the chief football officer. So the fact that we've been talking about it for probably 2 months now, maybe longer than that, and yet it's been suggested that it was a bit of a shock. I don't think it's being represented in the right way. I don't think it was a shock to anybody that this happened, apart from, obviously, in the afterglow of a great success, there was maybe the feeling that there might be a rethink and things might be given the opportunity to flourish again. But actually, taking the time, they've decided they wanted to move on. Should we talk about transfers? Because Crook is heavily in his transfer notebook at this moment in time. Do you want to lead this? Do you want to tell us what your latest big thing is, or do you want me to ask you some questions?
Well, the updates that we have today are that Manchester City have agreed a €40 million fee with Lyon for Ryan Cherki. I'm intrigued to see how he gets on in the Premier League, because I thought in that second leg in particular against Manchester United in the Europa League, what a player he could be. Fitness would be a concern for me, because he did empty quite quickly in that game, and we know that Pep Guardiola wants his players to be fit, but that's going to happen. Ryan Aït-Nouri signed a 5-year contract with Manchester City over the weekend. Reinders let the cat out of the bag when he said he'd already had his medical. So that's 3 players in at City before the Club World Cup. And obviously
Tiana,
Liverpool...
you're supposed to wait for the video to come out.
and Liverpool trying to get this Florian Wirtz deal done, but Bayer Leverkusen driving a hard bargain at the moment.
Yeah, that was so funny, wasn't it? He's just giving an interview, talking to someone, and went, "Yeah, I've had medical. Yeah, it's great, and I'm going to play at the Club World Cup." And they're like, "What? So it's done?" It's like, "Yeah. Oh, sorry, does no one know yet?" He's like, "No, no one's. They haven't done the big reveal." Jamie Gittins, Chelsea, likely.
I think so. Like with their pursuit of Mike Maignan, there is a discrepancy over fees. I think Chelsea were hoping to get players signed before the Club World Cup, and I think Milan, knowing that they're desperate to do that, are going to try and hold firm. And obviously it's a slightly bizarre situation. In the transfer window closes tomorrow, Tuesday, June the 10th, but only for about 6 days, and then it opens again. But obviously Chelsea and City are going to be at the Club World Cup, so you wouldn't expect them to do much more business until that tournament is over.
Yeah, so basically, let's just be clear. The transfer window closes what time? 11 o'clock or midnight on Tuesday night. And then after that, you can sign players again within 6 days. I think it's the 15th or 16th of June.
16th of June.
But they can't play at the Club World Cup. So this window is open specifically for players to be able to be recruited for that competition. So Chelsea want to get Mike Maignan done before they go, because they want him to play at the Club World Cup, which, Chelsea fans, I think, will be quite happy about, I'm going to be honest. And they want to try and get Gittins done, but I don't think they're as concerned if it isn't over the line before the Club World Cup, because that's someone that they can pursue further down the window, I think. What about what else is there to sort of discuss? Joe Bellingham. What do you make of this, Scott? Because he's going to Dortmund for 33 million quid, which is not bad for a Championship player, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, from Sunderland's point of view, the last thing really you want to... it's a club record for them, isn't it?
Yeah.
But still, in the same way, on a much bigger scale, but the principle is the same with Bruno Fernandes and Manchester United. You don't want to sell one of your best players, because you're already going to struggle, and then that means you've gone backwards before you've even tried to go forwards. And bringing anyone in, and with the respect, £33 million to bring Premier League quality in, probably only another player, so it's like for like. So you're not quite sure who's going to come in and if he's going to be as good as Joe Bellingham was. So I understand from a financial point of view why they've taken it. I still think from a football point of view, it's not a great decision. I also think from his point of view, I've really been sort of not fighting with myself, but wondering whether it's a good decision or not. In one respect, the family know the club, and the club knows the family, and they can go in and be well looked after. But he is so going to be compared to his brother, and he's not his brother.
But is he going to be compared to his brother wherever he goes? I mean,
even more so from the fans that have just seen his brother play for a couple of seasons.
Right. Okay.
So that's where I'm thinking. There'd be a part of me that'd be like, okay, it's going to be very accommodating for him. But there's another part of me that's going to be like, if I don't try and get up to my brother's levels, I'm always going to be compared to. Yes, of course, you're always going to compare to your brother, but not at the same club. So I'm really interested to see how it goes. But the family, they've done brilliant so far for both of them, haven't they? So I wouldn't knock whatever decision they make.
Yeah. Anything else to keep an eye on, Crookster? A Crook to Manchester United? Is that one that's in the offing?
Well, if I'd scored today, then maybe I could have replaced Rasmus Højlund. I think Newcastle and Jack Grealish is potentially interesting. That's been mentioned to me a couple of times. I think he's still more likely to go abroad. And obviously, we know Napoli are interested, but Eddie Howe would like to sign him. They're in for João Pedro as well. And I just sense with Brighton, despite sort of telling us at the end of the season that everything was okay after his training ground bust up with Jan-Paul van Hecker, he's going to come back and he'll learn from this and be a better player. I think if they get a decent bid and Newcastle very keen, they might just cash in because they're signing a 17-year-old striker from Greece for £34 million,
which is a lot of expenditure for Brighton, and obviously done with due diligence. So that's quite a big thing to do, isn't it? Just a quick word on the Grealish thing. Napoli, you mentioned, and obviously Kevin De Bruyne has been linked with that same club. What's happening with him?
I think that's pretty much done, De Bruyne. There was a possibility we go to America. Don't think his wife was particularly keen on that move. She wanted to stay in Europe, and last I heard, there was a 3-year contract waiting to be signed.
And Kyle Walker, he's not going to be part of the Manchester City changing of the guard, is he? I mean, but he's got another year on his contract.
Yeah, and he's not staying at Milan. Didn't go particularly well for him over there, so they'll try and find a new club for him. John Stones as well, although I've been told links with Everton at this stage are wider than mine. Everton are the other club, by the way, who also like the idea of signing Jack Grealish, but I think he'll want to play for somebody a little bit higher up the food chain.
There's going to be a lot that happens, I think, after the Club World Cup, as Crook has already mentioned, because of the transfer window, etc., etc. There's a few PSR issues for people to deal with too. The Club World Cup is live on talkSPORT, as is England against Senegal on Tuesday night. England under 21 against the Czech Republic under 21 in the European Championship, which starts this week as well. That's Thursday, 12th of June, and that will keep you going through the summer. They play Slovenia on Sunday. That's live on talkSPORT at 5 o'clock. That's just before Crookmeister returns to Old Trafford for the second time in a week. Yes, on Sunday it is Soccer Aid, but he's not good enough to play in that charity game. He'll be on the sidelines presenting it for talkSPORT at Old Trafford. Ollie Klink and Jason Cundy will be the commentary team. I'm doing the TV with Jason Manford. You know Jason Manford? He's doing the commentary with me on Sunday night for Soccer Aid, so looking forward to that. And Paris Saint-Germain against Atletico Madrid is in the Club World Cup. That's 8 o'clock on talkSPORT 2 on Sunday as well, with Scotty Minto. Looking forward to that. Right, gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll be back on Thursday afternoon. I think you'll probably get the podcast, so we're looking forward to that too. We'll be reviewing the Senegal thing and giving you all the information from the end of the transfer window, etc., etc., etc. This is the place to be, even in the dark period of the Premier League, where not much is happening. Well, there's always something happening.